Hi everyone, I'm Rukhsar Salim, a PhD scholar, and welcome to this explainer on plant nutrition. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this today. It's so common to look at a thriving houseplant or like a massive oak tree and think they just need three simple things to survive: water, dirt, and sunlight, right? It's an elegant idea, but honestly, it's massively oversimplified. Today, we're going to completely challenge that assumption and reveal the complex, invisible chemical factory that's constantly working right beneath the surface. We're going to break down the exact, highly sophisticated diet plants actually require to not just survive, but thrive. To keep our botanical journey structured, here's today's menu. First up, the essential plant menu. Second, macro and micronutrients. Third, how plants actually eat. And finally, diagnosing nutrient deficiencies. All right, let's dive right in.
Okay, Section 1, the essential plant menu, building blocks. Because before we even start talking about fertilizers, we have to establish what a plant fundamentally is.
So I want to start off by asking a seemingly simple question. What is a plant actually made of? Like, if you were to completely dehydrate a plant and just look at the remaining dry matter, what elements are you holding in your hand? A lot of people guess things from the soil, right? Minerals, nitrogen, maybe some iron. But the scientific reality? It's actually pretty surprising.
Check out this massive number, 95%. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen make up over 95% of a plant's entire biomass on a dry matter weight basis. And here is the absolute kicker. The plant doesn't get these from the dirt. It pulls carbon and oxygen straight from the air via carbon dioxide during photosynthesis, and it gets its hydrogen almost entirely from water. So think about it. The vast majority of the physical structure of that giant tree outside your window was quite literally pulled out of thin air and rainwater. Isn't that wild?
But hey, what about that remaining 5%? Well, that's where the soil comes in. And to really understand its importance, we have to look at Liebig's law of the minimum, which was established by Justus von Liebig way back in 1840. The crucial point here is that a plant's growth is dictated not by the total amount of resources available, but by the scarcest essential resource. Imagine a wooden barrel made of staves of different heights. That barrel can only hold water up to the shortest stave, right? So even if you give a plant unlimited sunlight, water, and nitrogen, if it's completely missing just one tiny trace mineral, it cannot complete a normal life cycle, period. Which brings us to Section 2, macro and micronutrients, the plant diet. We're going to categorize the 17 essential elements plants pull from their environment. Think of the proteins, carbohydrates, and trace vitamins in a human diet. Plants have a remarkably similar requirement.
So these are the hearty entrees of the plant world, the macronutrients. Plants need these in relatively large quantities. At the top, we have our primary macros. Nitrogen, which is absolutely vital for building amino acids and the green chlorophyll that catches sunlight. Phosphorus is next. That's the backbone of plant DNA and the ATP energy currency of the cell. Then potassium, which actually doesn't become a structural part of the plant, but acts as a massive regulator, controlling water pressure or turgor, and opening and closing the stomata on the leaves. Then we've got our secondary macros. Calcium, which literally glues plant cell walls together. Magnesium, sitting right at the absolute core of the chlorophyll molecule. And sulfur, essential for protein synthesis. If a plant is lacking any of these, growth just halts almost immediately.
But as we just learned from Liebig's law, those big nutrients aren't enough on their own. Here we have the micronutrients. You can think of these as the trace vitamins of the plant world. They're needed in incredibly tiny amounts, we're talking parts per million here, but they are absolutely crucial. Iron is a non-negotiable cofactor for photosynthesis. Zinc protects plant growth hormones. Boron is super fascinating because it helps move highly polar sugars through cell membranes so the fastest growing parts of the plant don't starve. Molybdenum is required for enzymes that process nitrogen. And this brilliantly illustrates how interconnected plant biology really is. I mean, without a microscopic trace of molybdenum, a plant could be completely surrounded by nitrogen and still starve to this because it just lacks the enzyme to process it. All right, let's move along to Section 3, how plants actually eat, mechanics beneath dirt. Now that we know exactly what's on the menu, how do they actually ingest it?
So plants do not just act like passive straws, sucking up whatever water happens to pass by. No way. They actively manipulate their chemical environment. It starts with cation exchange. Roots literally pump hydrogen ions out into the soil. Because soil particles are negatively charged, they hold on to positively charged nutrient salts. The hydrogen ions essentially bump those nutrients off the soil so the root can grab them.
Then, for step 2, transport, those nutrients travel into the center of the root and shoot up through the plant's plumbing system, known as the xylem. And step 3 is just incredible: symbiosis. Many plants partner with mycorrhizal fungi to drastically expand their root surface area, literally trading plant sugars for hard-to-reach soil nutrients.
And getting those nutrients into the actual cells, that is a highly regulated process. On the left here, we see simple diffusion. This one's easy. Nonpolar molecules like oxygen and carbon dioxide just flow passively along the concentration gradient right into the cell. No energy required at all. But on the right, with active transport, sometimes the plant desperately needs a specific ion that is already in high concentration inside the cell. The plant actually has to expend precious ATP energy to manually pump those ions against the gradient. It's really a testament to how aggressively plants hunt for what they need.
Speaking of aggressively hunting for nutrients, we absolutely have to talk about nitrogen fixation. The Earth's atmosphere is almost 79% nitrogen gas, but plants can't use it because atmospheric nitrogen has a super tough triple bond that makes it inert. It's kind of like dying of thirst in the middle of the ocean. So certain plants, like legumes, partner with special bacteria in their roots. These bacteria perform the biological magic of breaking that triple bond and converting the gas into usable ammonium or nitrate ions. Seriously, without these microscopic processors, global agriculture as we know it would just grind to a halt.
Okay, now for the practical application. Section 4, Diagnosing Nutrient Deficiencies. Let's see how we can use all this science to act as botanical doctors when our plants get sick.
Understanding nutrient mobility is honestly your ultimate diagnostic cheat code. Nutrients in a plant are either mobile or immobile. If a nutrient is mobile, like nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, the plant can actively relocate it. So if the plant is starving, it's going to strip these nutrients from its older, lower leaves and send them straight to the brand new growth at the top to ensure survival. Because of this, symptoms of mobile nutrient deficiencies always show up in older leaves first. Now, on the right, we have immobile nutrients like calcium or boron. Once the plant places them, they are stuck there. If the plant suddenly runs out of calcium, it cannot steal it from the old leaves. Therefore, the old leaves look perfectly healthy, but the brand new growth at the tip comes out deformed or even dead.
Let's look at the most common limiting factor in agriculture: nitrogen deficiency. Because nitrogen is highly mobile, you'll see chlorosis, which is just a fancy word for severe yellowing, starting right at the bottom of the plant on those older leaves. You'll also see stunted overall growth and, interestingly, a purple appearance on the stems and petioles caused by an accumulation of anthocyanin pigments. The plant is essentially cannibalizing itself from the bottom up just to keep its growing tip alive. Now compare that to a calcium deficiency. Remember, calcium is immobile. It acts kind of like mortar in a brick wall for plant cells. If the root supply drops even for a short time, the new cells being built simply collapse. The older leaves will look totally fine, but the new leaves will come out curled or blackened. Actually, if you've ever grown tomatoes and seen the bottom of the fruit turn into a black, sunken, rotting mess just as it gets ripe, yeah, that is blossom end rot, and it is a classic, super frustrating sign of localized calcium deficiency.
Let's do a quick rapid-fire rundown of a few other visual symptoms so you can spot them at home. Phosphorus deficiency often presents as intense dark green or even red and purple coloring on older leaves. Iron deficiency is famous for interveinal chlorosis on new growth, meaning the leaf turns bright yellow but the veins stay starkly green. Zinc deficiency causes little leaf syndrome, where new leaves are incredibly stunted and stacked on top of each other because the stem just can't expand. And missing boron? Well, you'll get lumpy fruit like deformed strawberries, and the terminal growing points will literally just die off.
But wait, before you run out and dump a bunch of fertilizer on your plants, we really have to talk about the danger of toxicity. Plant nutrition is an incredibly delicate balancing act. An abundance of one nutrient can actually cause a deficiency of another by blocking the roots from absorbing it. For instance, if you apply way too much potassium, it can drastically depress calcium uptake. So you might see calcium deficiency symptoms and think, oh, I need to add calcium. But the real issue is you poison the soil with too much potassium. More is definitely not always better in the complex world of soil chemistry.
So, bringing this all together, I want to leave you with a question. Next time you look at a simple houseplant, will you see just leaves and dirt? Or will you see the complex, invisible chemical factory working constantly beneath the surface? From actively pumping hydrogen ions, to partnering with microscopic fungi, to rerouting mobile nutrients to save their own lives, plants are absolute masters of their chemical domains. I really hope this explainer has completely shifted how you view the natural world around you. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep learning.